If you have a glitch in the Matrix story you'd like to share with the channel, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to send it my way. And of course, thank you. First off, I've had many odd instances throughout my life, but they either didn't seem of note or didn't leave any substantial evidence that it actually happened. I've been a fan of your storytelling for about a year now, so I'm kind of excited to share my latest occurrence that I currently have physical, circumstantial proof of taking place. This glitch all stems from a pizza shop I run with my girlfriend. She's the general manager and I'm the assistant manager, and an awful early morning hour that our shop got broken into. This happened a few months ago, and by the time one of us got there to open the shop that day, it was disgustingly apparent that someone broke through the glass door. They stole a couple of things along with our register drawer, haphazardly ripping out the cords and everything. Quite the mess. We immediately informed upper management after calling the police, as we needed a replacement drawer as soon as humanly possible. Upon receiving the new drawer, we hastily installed it into our system network. As with anything that locks, this drawer also came with 2 keys, little ones, on a single keyring. My girlfriend promptly tossed them in her purse, as they weren't ever remarkably necessary. We only ever need the keys in case of an emergency like a power outage or something, as the drawer opens itself with any cash transaction, or when a managerial function is executed. All was right again on that front, and we were good to go. So, about a month ago, my girl was looking for something in her purse. It's one of those cute, tiny backpack types, so a plethora of random things end up at the bottom. Amongst the array of items, she had an arbitrary amount of keys, some of which were these 6 odd little silver keys. She picked them out of the assortment and casually asked me, "What are these for?" So I equally responded with a casual shrug. After on closer inspection, I noticed a short serial number of sorts on them and tried Googling them, but to no avail. I had to note that all 6 had the same serial number and were actually identical to each other. Pressing them next to one another showed the teeth of each key lining up perfectly. At this point, we're both getting weirded out as we cannot recall where these keys even came from, so we did a quick rundown of all the keys on hand. One was to her old car that was totaled in a wreck a long time ago. Another was a copy of our old apartment key, as we live in a house now. And there was even a small key to a padlock we had on a storage closet a few years ago. That's all aside from the keys to our current cars and the ones to the doors around our house. A nice jumble, I know, yet no recollection of these exact 6 keys in question. Maybe they were for the filing cabinet at work, maybe for the walk-in cooler. No clue. Except that we thought they looked like the keys to the new register drawer. But as we haven't needed to use them yet, we were ultimately unsure. Also, coupled with the fact that there were only 2 keys, not 6. The next noteworthy circumstance is that the 6 keys came in sets of 2, but were all connected, just like the original 2 keys on a single keyring. The other 2 pairs came on their own respective keyrings, but were all linked together by the rings. So, it seemed like something that was intentionally done. Then I asked her if she linked them together like that, and she quickly said, "No." I proceeded to ask if she might have absent-mindedly done it one day and forgot about doing it, and she annoyingly said, "No, there was only the 2." We both knew there was only 2. We were dumbfounded, with no obvious explanation, so we dropped it for the time being. Now, for the kicker. The next day, I took all 6 keys to work as I opened that day. there is no way I wasn't going to at least try to see if they fit into anything around the shop, and unlocked whatever they might fit into. Even more so, I needed to know if these were, in fact, for our register's drawer. Well, as it turns out, they are. They all work for unlocking the drawer. All 6 of them, as they are identical to each other. These 3 pairs of keys that ended up connected by the key rings, somehow, within my girlfriend's purse, are the keys to our new register drawer. No idea how this happened, or how it even could happen. It seemed wholly physically impossible. Yet there I stood, with 6 keys to this drawer. A drawer that came fresh out of the box with only 2 keys. Weird stuff, man. I just recently came across your channel and subscribed, as I like to listen to these stories as I fall asleep. I was listening to a video of yours from a couple of weeks ago when I heard a story so similar to my own experience that I was encouraged to share. It was specifically a story about misplaced objects that you assume you just look over a million times, only for them to reappear exactly where you left them. Usually, when this happens to me, it's a small object thrown in with many other small or cluttered objects. Say a pen on a desk, or an item of makeup spread among other products that I spend an unreasonable amount of time staring at and moving items around, before I finally find what I'm looking for. This is easy for me to chalk up to just being scatterbrained or not paying attention. But I had an experience, probably around my first or second year of high school, that I still find extremely odd to this day. This would have been around 2010 or 2011. I was a teenager and a heavy sleeper, so I would not rely on my phone alarm to wake me up in the mornings, as it would often end up under my pillows or switched to vibrate. I had a large, old-school digital radio clock, probably from around the early 2000s, given to me by my mom. I used it to clearly see the time, and for the radio as I got ready in the mornings. It was probably about 4 inches across, 3 inches wide, and an inch tall with a flat top and a speaker and button for settings, and alarms that were small and clustered together on the left side. The digital face was across the front. I didn't like having to fiddle with the small buttons on top to set my alarm for the morning, and I hit every wrong button trying to turn it off in my sleepy haze. So I preferred to have a secondary alarm sitting on top of it. This one was a small, round analog clock that stood on a base. I kept both because, once again, being a sleepy, grumpy teen, it was a task for me to attempt to decipher a tiny clock face in my initial waking moments. Hence why I kept both. The big clunky radio on the bottom, and the small analog on top. It was my nightly routine to set my alarm and head to bed. One night, I had fully prepared myself for bed, and I went to set my alarm. When I turned to my nightstand, my digital clock was there, but the smaller alarm, usually sitting firmly on top, was nowhere to be found. Sometimes, in my rush to get ready in the mornings, I would hit it with a blanket or accidentally drag it into bed with me. So I began searching around my bed. It was probably around 10 minutes that I spent looking at everything on my nightstand, next to it, behind it, under it, in my bed, under the sheets, pillows, and then under the bed. I was starting to get extremely frustrated, and I knew the longer I stayed up looking for this stupid alarm clock, the more trouble I would have getting up in the morning. So, I decided to enlist my mom's help in searching for it. I walked down the hall and knocked on her bedroom door. She answered within a minute. I explained that I couldn't find my alarm clock, and she followed me back to my room. probably annoyed that she had to get out of bed to help her teen find a misplaced object. I stepped back into my room, explaining everywhere that I had already looked, and that it was nowhere to be found. She took one look into my room and said, "Isn't that it right there?" I looked to where she gestured, and there it was, sitting right in its spot on top of the radio, as if I hadn't spent an entire 10 minutes looking everywhere for it. I turned back and swore to her that it wasn't there when I left the room, and that there was no way I could have missed it, as I had not only moved and sorted through everything sitting on the nightstand, but it was one thing on top of another, and it was literally impossible to simply overlook. She laughed and joked that I had a helpful ghost that found it for me, and placed it back there so I could get a good night's rest. I always liked that explanation, as it weirdly made me less creeped out than the possibility that our reality is not as it seems. To this day, this is still the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. It's not as wild as some of the other stories I've heard, but it unnerved me all the same. And I think about it every time something goes missing. I always ask nicely for it to be returned, and then I'll find it shortly after. Thank you for reading and creating such great content. Thank you. I know that stories about September 11th, 2001 are a bit outdated now, but my story starts on September 10th. At about 5 o'clock, I left my terrible job and my terrible boss, and then headed for home. I had just bought a condominium on the side of the hill and loved it. I had a big blue chair that I loved to relax in. I had big sliding glass doors that looked out over the city. I got home and made a salad for dinner. I sat in my big blue chair and I ate my salad while I was watching TV. I ended up falling asleep in my chair. I dreamed about seeing the nose cone of an airplane coming through my sliding glass door. I could hear screaming, I felt hot, and I could hear glass breaking. I could also smell what, in my mind, smelled like death. It actually smelled like a grandmother's basement, sort of wet dirt and mold. The dream woke me up out of a dead sleep. I got up, brushed my teeth, and got into bed. The next morning, I woke up, did the normal things you do to get ready for work, and drove to my office. I sat at my computer and started to search the internet about what plane crash dreams meant. The browser opened, and I was able to type in what I wanted to know, but when I hit search, the screen went white. About that time, the office assistant came in and said, "I just heard a small plane crashed into the World Trade Center in New York City." I said, "Wow, that's weird." We went into a conference room and turned on the television. We were watching the news, and they were talking about the plane that had crashed into the World Trade Center. At that moment, we could see on live television another plane. Everybody knows by now that it crashed into the second World Trade Center. As that day progressed, everyone felt unsafe, weird, and violated. I always wonder about why I would dream the night before about plane crashing into my sliding glass doors. I have had intuition and premonitions about things before. They've always been very vague, like this one. And I know there's nothing I could have done or could have told anyone, but I still feel kind of guilty. I was riding one of those electric scooters for the first time in town with other family members. As we were coming to a crossway, I squeezed too hard on the brakes and went flying over the scooter and onto the sidewalk and grassway. I could feel my arms and knees being scraped up as I skid over the sidewalk and into the grass. I raised my arms to assess the damage. My left arm was scraped from my wrist all the way to my elbow, bleeding with gravel and grass mixed throughout the cuts. My right arm sustained scrapes, mainly on my wrist area with the gravel and grass on it as well. My husband looked down and said, "Oh, wow, are you alright?" I said, "Yeah, it just stings." And then I pulled up my pant leg to look at my knees. And there were only a few small bruises. I said, well, my pants must have protected my knees then. And then I went to raise my arms again, wanting to brush off the gravel and grass before attempting to clean it up with wet wipes that I keep on me. As I looked at my arms, there was nothing there, on either arm. No grass, no gravel, no scrapes, not even a bruise. Then, I noticed that the pain was completely gone as well. I looked up at my husband and we both were confused. I started to say, "Wait, I thought that..." and he finished with, "Me too." Subscribing to the channel guarantees at least 1 minute of good luck in your day. Give it a shot. The story goes with your glitch in the Matrix stories. It's pretty short, but something that really confused both my friend and we still can't understand it. So, for a little background, the weather here has finally started warming up, and we've had really nice sunny days. So, today, I wanted to show my friend a really cool secluded spot I found in our small town, since it's been so cold and we haven't been able to adventure and enjoy the outdoors. Her and I also both like to smoke, and it's something we enjoy doing together, in new sesh spots that we find through other people or through exploring. So, anyway, I showed her around the spot. We sat down on some nice little rocks in a clearing, and we shared our joint that we brought, and just took in the nature vibes and peace around us for a bit. After about 40 minutes, we decided that it was getting a little too windy for our liking, and started collecting our things to head out. Well, as I said, it was very windy and I was struggling a bit putting the joint container and lighter back into my purse, and right as I let go of the lighter, I felt it miss my bag and fall to the ground. Yet, I didn't hear a sound. I immediately looked down at the ground, and my lighter was nowhere to be seen. Keep in mind, it's a bright blue lighter, and the ground surrounding us is entirely green and brown. So, a little confused, I check my purse. It's not there. So then I think, okay, maybe it all hit me a little harder than I thought. And I started checking my pockets, and yes, even my hand to see if somehow I just thought I went to put it away. But no, it wasn't in my jacket or pants pockets. Of course, it wasn't in my hands, and after all that, I checked my purse once again and still couldn't find it. At this point, my friend and I are searching everywhere on the ground, moving grass and plants, checking under our feet, shaking clothes, and checking pockets and purses a third time. Nowhere. We weren't close to an edge or a hole in the ground. And yet this thing seemingly fell out of my hand and out of existence, never to be seen again. So, yeah, I know this wasn't the craziest story you've gotten, but I still cannot stop thinking about it. For those not familiar with British TV shows, the Hairy Bikers were two men with beards and mustaches who rode around on motorbikes doing cooking. Only a few years earlier, before this became news, myself and my parents had a discussion when we saw them appear in a TV advert. One parent said, "I thought one of them had died." This parent doesn't believe in anything ESP related. In fact, they're typically oblivious of any sort of world affairs. Any major events in the world, odds are, they are unaware of it. The other parents said, "No, I think both of them died." The first parent then replied, "Well, I know one of them died. He had cancer." They then asked me, but I said that I didn't know much about the hairy bikers. I then replied that I guess maybe one of them died, but I don't know. I'll go check. So I looked up their page on Wikipedia, and both were reported as being alive. Both parents insisted that they had seen the reports that they were dead. They're not users of the internet, so it isn't something they just read somewhere, and neither claimed it was a rumor. One insisted they had seen a BBC News report of the hairy bikers' deaths. We had this discussion back in 2022. I'm pretty sure one of them mentioned it in passing back in 2021, but it was mostly brushed off as an, oh, that's sad if it's true. Viewers of this channel will be able to verify for themselves that, as of February 2024, one of the hairy bikers died of cancer. Attached is an article they sent for me to verify, and I can confirm. The title of the article, dated February 2024, reads, "The hairy bikers star Dave Myers, who had cancer, dies at 66. Both of my parents had agreed before it had even happened that one of the hairy bikers had died, and one had even specified the cause of death being cancer. Upon seeing this news, I remarked perhaps they had seen the future or come from an alternate timeline where it already happened. One parent insists the other had died in some sort of accident, where they'd fallen off some bridge, or something similar. Given they were right about the first death, I wonder if they will be right about the second." Hello, my name is Rebecca. My friends and family call me Becky. This true story happened to my brother Jeremy and I when I was 12 years old, and my brother was 13 years old back in 2007. I was always interested in history, but never really believed in the paranormal. But what happened to my brother Jeremy and I made me a believer in another dimension, or time travel being possible. I remember one hot summer day in South Dakota. I was horsing around with my brother Jeremy in our spacious backyard, where there were coyotes, prairie dogs, pronghorn sheep, and bison. Jeremy was larger and taller than I was, so I jumped on a big barrel to appear taller than him. But as soon as I got on the barrel and stood straight up preparing for me to laugh at him for being taller, the whole landscape around us started to change to an old western mining kind of town. The kind that you would see in a John Wayne or Clint Eastwood cowboy movie. I could see the many horses and wagons tied to hitching posts at the general store and the hotels. I was curious on what year it was because all I could see were many horses and wagons. No cars at all. I was thinking that Jeremy and I must have fallen into another timeline. Looking around at our surroundings, I could tell that this was before 1920, and was probably before 1910 too. As luck would have it, I looked over to my left and saw a vintage circus was coming to town. On a poster sitting on a tree, saying the date of August 10th, 1873. Wow, I thought to myself, 1873 Deadwood, South Dakota. Seth Bullock was the famous sheriff here at this time period. The circus would be coming to my hometown, Deadwood, South Dakota. How about that? My brother Jeremy and I were lucky to have read the circus program because we knew what state and time the circus was. I noticed that my blonde hair was still long, but had a big red bow in the middle of it. I then looked down to see my clothes, and they had changed also. I changed from a cute top, shorts, and sneakers to a fabulous pink dress. I was also barefoot. I then looked down at my brother. Jeremy was no longer wearing a nice top, pants, and sneakers, but an old-fashioned top, short pants, and was also barefoot. He had a newspaper boy cap on his head. I thought he looked cute. Jeremy and I then noticed that we were right in the middle of many townspeople hooting and hollering, watching something that was about to take place in this South Dakota mining town. Jeremy and I looked ahead of us, and we were surprised to see that there was indeed a hanging about to take place. I did not know who the prisoner was, nor what he was charged with, only that he was going to be hanged. The prisoner was a good-looking man in his 40s with a black handlebar mustache, wearing a brown in color 3-piece suit. The executioner was an elderly man wearing a black top hat and black suit. The hangman asked the prisoners if he wanted to say something, any last words. The prisoner shook his head no as the hangman put a big black hood over the prisoner's head and pulled the lever as the trapdoor opened and he fell through. My brother and I watched the prisoner thrash around a while, like a fish out of water, before all was silent and there was no movement at all. Jeremy and I were still watching the prisoner being hanged, as an enormous in-size man with a large walrus kind of mustache, wearing a brown derby hat and brown suit, which was too small for him, gently grabbed my hand telling me to get off the barrel and to go home, because children should not be watching a public hanging. The huge man scolded us once more for watching the hanging as he helped me down from the barrel. As soon as he did, I heard a large clap of thunder, as I and Jeremy basically returned to the present, which was 2007 at the time. When Jeremy and I got back to our parents' house, we told them everything, but they didn't believe us. Only one friend of mine thought that my story was real. She was a good friend. The interesting thing was that Jeremy and I seemed to be gone at least an hour, but my parents said that we were only outside for 2 minutes. Jeremy and I must have experienced a time slip or something. Again, I was thankful to see the vintage circus picture, because it told us what state and what year we were suddenly thrust into. My brother Jeremy and I must have slipped into another dimension or timeline, but we were both thankful that we were back in the present. Something surely paranormal happened to us there. I worked in a dental clinic as a nationally certified dental assistant. I saw a lot of names on charts daily for many years. I'd gone home for the day and celebrated my birthday with my parents and sister. My sister had asked my mom what she could get me, and my mother had replied, an iPhone, of course. They were brand new then. She was amazed at the wealth of great information at her fingertips, always asking my sister questions to find the answers to. I was never so surprised to see this gift. It was fabulous. I tried to learn all I could about it, all night long until early in the morning. My mother wasn't feeling so well, and so I was careful as I got up for work to be extra quiet. I was almost ready early, and then suddenly my phone screamed madly. Then this music started and a voice screamed out, "James Brown!" It was an old song that my sister downloaded to show me how to do it earlier, but I hadn't touched anything to cause this. Over and over it did this. I was unable to turn it down or off, so I shoved it under a pillow until I could leave the house that morning to look at it closer. It was as if it had a mind of its own. I seemed to grasp the volume on-off and could not imagine why it would just keep repeating that scream and announcement, which was a live recording of a very old song. Once in the car, it finally stopped. I think it just ran out of juice. I was relieved. It had me on edge for over an hour fighting with it to shut it up. I got to work, an hour's drive to the dental clinic, and I got the chart for our first patient and set up the room for our procedure completely, and then went to the waiting room to call a man back to the clinic. And, "James Brown?" I called, when my patient arose and came back with me into the operatory. I could not believe it. I don't know if this is a glitch or if it's some kind of paranormal event, I was about 24 years old and was living with my mother at the time. She bought a mirror from a garage sale that was about 20 by 30 in size. I didn't go with her, and I had no idea where she bought it. I don't know why, but I felt that I needed to stare at the mirror and ask, who owned this mirror? I then saw a couple in the mirror standing next to each other, like that old farmer painting. I just noticed the couple, how they looked, hair color, and outfits. I described them to my mother, and she told me that they were the couple that she bought the mirror from. How could I see them in the mirror? Like I said, I didn't go with her when she bought it, and I don't know them myself. So that, my friends, was this week's collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. Stories that are just strange. That show in no particular manner precisely how unhinged our reality truly is. Yes, how broken existence can be. Strange, bizarre oddities that I enjoy telling you once a week. Every Monday, sometimes Tuesday, depending on how I'm feeling on Monday or Sunday whenever I choose to record. Not really relevant, just saying that these are every Monday, and hopefully you all enjoy them on Mondays. And then there are more stories throughout the week that aren't these. But I'm assuming if you're listening to this all the way to the end and paying attention to the outro, you probably already know that. And if not, you now do. So, yeah. If you enjoyed these strange, bizarre, and odd stories, consider hitting that thumbs up button. That helps a lot, believe me. The other thing you can do to help a lot is subscribe to the channel if you're new and enjoyed what you heard, as I, again, do these weekly, and then do other stories throughout the week, depending on whatever I have or what I find. Yeah. Sometimes paranormal, sometimes supernatural stuff, sometimes oddities, sometimes just downright creepy people. It really doesn't really depend on my mood. It really just depends on how things go during the month prior and the week prior, and on Reddit and in my subscriptions, my submissions, I meant to say. Yeah. Stories. Anyways, I was trying to think what else. Oh yeah. You can join Patreon and memberships where you get early access to content like this if you enjoy my content and want to support it more. There are also other things that you get depending on what you sign up for and how you sign up. That's all fun and games and all that. No, there's no games. Might not even be fun. It's just and. You can also do a super thanks to the channel, which is just a tip. Nothing other than that. It's just a tip to the channel. Support. And it's always appreciated, but never ever expected. The last thing we can do, notice I said we, not just you, is leave a comment on this video with what we call the word of the week. It doesn't have to include the word of the week. You can just leave a comment. But if you include a word of the week, your comment will, the word of the week, not a, it has to be the word of the week this week, will be featured on the screen, as you can see now and several moments prior to now, all the people who submitted sentences with last week's word of the week. Every single one of these people went above and beyond, and I thank them so very much for it. Again, I never expect you guys to participate, but you always do. And I'm not saying I don't want you to, I just never expect anyone to commit the time. I appreciate it, and I'm glad people do, but to set an expectation would be too much, if that makes sense. It doesn't, but just let it be what it is. So, thank you to every single one of you who submitted a story, yes, but who submitted a word of the week sentence last week as well. You're all amazing. Let's move on to this week's word of the week before my brain decides to fry out entirely. This week, the word of the week, you've already heard it in this outro, is unhinge, or unhinged. Your choice. But the word unhinge means to make unstable or to remove from the hinges. Unhinged being the state of being unstable. So, as it is, these outros are a little bit unhinged. That is to say, they are unstable. Me, I'm unstable. Anyways, friends, hope you all have a beautiful rest of your week. Hope I do see you again here very soon. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love, and sleep well.